Okay, let's learn to name molecular compounds. It's very easy. So the first thing is to note is, number one, make sure before you try to name it that you're dealing with a molecular compound. Make sure you are dealing with a molecular compound. Now that might sound funny, but oftentimes people try to name these in the same way that they try to name ionic compounds. How would I know it's a molecular compound? It does not have a metal in it, right? It does not have a metal. So the second I see a metal, like for instance, NaCl, how do I know that's a metal? Well, it's to the left of the staircase in the periodic table. If there's a metal in it and some other element, it's going to be an ionic compound. You might ask, what if it's two metals? Well, two metals don't bond technically in the same way that sodium and chlorine do, or that, say, carbon and oxygen do. They create what's called an alloy, which is a mixture of the metal elements, and you get that by essentially melting them and mixing them together. It's not really a reaction in the sense that you would, say, take iron and chromium or something and make them react together. You can get them to mix, or you can mix them into like steel, which is got carbon mixed in with the iron. It's a little bit different. There's a little bit of a reaction going on there, but metal with metal is called an alloy, and we don't really study alloys, okay? Anyway, this is ionic because it's got a metal in it, right? It's got a metal and a non-metal. So first check that. These are named in the way that we've already learned: sodium chloride, iron 2 oxide, and so on. Number two, use prefixes to show number of atoms of each type in the molecule. So what do I mean by that? Well, first, let's see why we have to do that. These two things exist. This and this both exist, okay? It's not like with ionic compounds where their charge dictates their ratios, okay? You can only have this scenario for NaCl. You can only have this scenario for magnesium chloride, right? Carbon and oxygen can combine in these two different ways, and other elements like nitrogen and oxygen can combine in many different ways. So we have to have a way of saying what we mean. Do we mean this one or do we mean this one? So we can't just say carbon oxide, okay? So for this, I'm going to give you the name first, then we're going to go through the logic. The first one here is carbon monoxide. The second one is carbon, what do you want to guess? Dioxide. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're naming these with prefixes to tell us the number of atoms of each type. Mono means one oxygen. Di means two oxygens. Okay, so I'm going to write out the prefixes. We're going to have a look at a couple of more of these. So this will be our table of prefixes. There's just a couple of other rules after we get this nailed down. So table of prefixes: 1, mono; 2, di; 3, anyone want to guess? Tri; 4, if there's 4, this is a little weird one, but if there's 4, it's tetra. No. 5. What's 5? What, no? Penta. 6. Hexa. Yeah, hexa, like a hexagon. Oops, I actually put hexagon. It's just hexa. I think it's hept. I don't know if there's any hepts out there. 8, octo. 9, no, nona. 10, deca. Okay, so we're going to do a couple of examples here, and I want you to notice something that's happening. What if we were to have, let's try some random, let's try to name these 3 things. I'm not sure if this one actually exists, but, okay, so the first one, this is going to be nitrogen monoxide. Now I want you to notice something. There's only one of each of these, but we still put the mono on the second one. So this is a little rule. This is a little sub-rule, or a little note. Note. The second element always gets a prefix. Okay? So mono on the second one, always. Always a prefix. The first one will only get a prefix if it's got a value other than 1. Okay? So there's 1N, 1O. We don't say mononitrogen. We never say that. We never start with a mono. However, on this one, yes, dinitrogen, dioxide. And then the last one, excellent, dinitrogen pentoxide. And that's another note we'll make, dinitrogen pentoxide. The prefix is penta, but in English we don't tend to like jam 2 different sounding vowel sounds together very often. So pentaoxide sounds weird, so we just drop the A and go with pentoxide. Does that make sense? Same with carbon dioxide. No, that's not a good example. Never mind. We just don't say pentaoxide. It's just pentoxide. Okay? Are there any questions about how to name this stuff? What would this one be? Hexa. Sulfur hexafluoride is interesting because it is like the reverse of helium in terms of what it does to your voice. Are there any questions about this before we move on?